This episode of All Things Business, the podcast, is brought to you by our digital media partner, DFA Law. DFA Law, providers of expert and dedicated legal advice to businesses and families since 1838. DFA Law, the law firm for life.
Fraser.
Ben.
All right?
Yep, very well, mate. You?
Yeah, very good. Got two more guests today.
I know, coming thick and fast.
I know. And on the subject of quality high-end business events, this takes me back about 10 years to my first appearance. I'll say first appearance. First time I attended the Northamptonshire Limited Report.
Bit of nostalgia.
Yeah.
But how Northamptonshire has changed in 10 years.
So, our guests, Matt, Mike, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Thanks
Relax,
for having
Mike.
us.
Don't look too nervous.
Sorry.
For those watching and listening, Matt, introduce yourself and.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, I'm Matt Thompson. I'm a corporate partner at Howes Percival. Been there far too long now, and feeling really part of the Northamptonshire furniture. So, yeah.
Yep. And yeah, Mike Tillson, corporate finance partner at Grant Thornton. So I lead Northants and the East of England for GT Advisory, and we support private business owners across a whole range of professional services.
So just to set the scene, first time I went to the Northamptonshire Limited event, probably about 9 years ago at the Saints.
Yeah.
Great event, 200 people in there for the breakfast that Mike Hughes used to host when he was obviously with Grant Thornton. But Northants Limited has very much been the baby of Grant Thornton. Has been going. This is the 11th report, and it's basically a report based on the top 100 privately owned businesses in the county.
Yeah, that's right, by revenue. So the purpose is really to celebrate and promote the top 100 companies. A lot of companies we go and see and tell them you're in the top 100, and they're really pleased. We give them the little trophy, and many of them have it all the years lined up against each other that they've been in there, and it's something they take pride in, and it's just a great talking point as well for us to get to know them and understand what they do. Often when you pop in and see them to give the award, you'll get to go around the factory or the facility, whatever it is, and just learn more about the business, get to know the owner or the leadership team. So for us, it's just a great tool to meet some really good businesses.
Now, you obviously worked with Howes Percival for a number of years, but Matt, from your perspective, Howes Percival are a lot more involved this year than perhaps previous years.
Yeah, that's right. Like you, Ben, we've been to the awards, the Northamptonshire Limited Breakfast a number of years, and really supporting it. And the first time we've really had a chance to actually get under the skin of the report and co-author it alongside Grant Thornton. So we're really, really proud to be able to do so. We've got a really good working relationship with the guys at Grant Thornton. Work really closely with Mike and his team. It's just nice to be able to put our name to something that is, as you say, a really good celebration of business in Northampton.
It takes me back actually to, I don't know if you remember a lady called Julia Schumacher.
Okay.
I think she still lives in the county, but she worked for what was Northamptonshire Enterprise Partnership, NEP, that used to be on the, I think they're on the Billing Road in Northampton. And back then, their job was to promote Northamptonshire to other areas of the country, encourage businesses when they were looking at relocating or acquisitions or redeveloping, come to Northamptonshire. Don't go to Nottinghamshire. Don't go to Leicestershire. Come to Northamptonshire. Yeah. And Julia ran a very active, on the sort of front foot scheme called the Northamptonshire Ambassadors. It wasn't a club, but they had 100 people basically that wore the badge with pride. And I remember attending a number of events there years ago, and the same conversation was coming up, which Northamptonshire is not just known for shoes and high-performance engineering. We're so much more than the British Grand Prix. And this report definitely does that.
Yeah.
Because I think you've never been to one, or you haven't been yet, have you?
To the Northamptonshire Limited, I went to the last one.
What did you think? What did you think to that? Because as a first timer,
I think the insight into the report's phenomenal, because we here at All Things Business are probably a little bit more fortunate than other people because we deal with the broad spectrum of businesses across the county. But like you said earlier, there's people on that list that were like scratching their head. Who are you? How are you turning over more than £18.3 million? And they stand out.
Yeah, and just on that then, Mike, for people that haven't perhaps seen, well, they wouldn't have seen this report yet, but maybe not being aware of the report, who comes in at number 1 and gives an idea of what their turnover is versus number 100?
Yes, I think number 1 is 1.4 billion.
And that's Avara Foods.
Yeah, and down to, I think you said 18.3 million at the bottom end. So it is a real spread. Those companies at the top end are probably, or most of them are, multinational organisations, selling all over the world, probably multi-product, multi-category, very complicated or complex in their operations, supply chain, finance, tax, etc. And there's obviously, so much support and services that they'll naturally consume and want and need to consume. And so, that's great for the professional services community. And then down at the bottom is probably, cliche would be your kind of owner managed business or private company that, perhaps as, kind of multi-generation and they're perhaps not working with, the bigger name advisors in town, but, they're great businesses, they make good profit at that level. And we obviously report on profit as well as just revenue. And so, there's so much value you can add to those companies. And I think something that Matt, part of the reason that we did this report together, which you mentioned, is actually we think we can add more value by working together,
Absolutely.
Before we released the report, we ran through the list together. Who do you know? And we help them with certain things, obviously within confidentiality, but by joining some dots and then actually being able to go and speak to those companies with kind of a more joined up approach on how we can help them on certain things, it just adds value. And we want candidly we want to do this with all advisors. This isn't just HP and GT. This is we're going to be hosting a dinner for many of the attendees or many of the companies that feature in the top 100 in the new year. And we're happy for other advisors to bring their clients, if we don't service them, but another, you mentioned other law firms earlier, just before we started, if they can bring clients, then fantastic, because actually it's all about sharing our relationships and our contacts to add value. Business gets done when people are talking about stuff, not when they're being protective and kind of secretive about what they're doing, right?
Yeah, and I think that's highlighted in the report that there's so much good news in. It's actually refreshing to read this report rather than the last one that I saw, because that was during the turbulent times where the report was all over. But I think majority of employees are up. Gross turnover,
EBITDA.
I think EBITDA is up.
From your perspective, Matt, is a particular standout either as a sector or the performance of a particular business?
Sectors is a big thing for me particularly. I mean, as you said at the outset, logistics always comes to mind in Northampton. Automotive comes to mind. But did we think that we'd have 30 companies in the sort of consumer sector, or 23 in the industrial product sector,
which in the consumer sector represents nearly 50% of the total turnover? That is just under 5 billion.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
And the top 100 collectively is about 10 billion.
Correct. Yeah. And then tech businesses. Eight tech businesses that are in there. We're sort of 1% behind Cambridgeshire in terms of the amount of tech businesses that we've got here. But we don't shout about that enough. I don't think we do as a sort of.
It's a real standout. We spoke about it before coming on. There's loads of things that jump off the page here, but the tech one compared to Cambridgeshire, that was, I don't know, almost a proud moment of look at Northamptonshire.
Yeah, and you've got obviously this year the acquisition of ACS by Beckler. If I'm honest, I hadn't heard of Beckler before that.
Nope.
Beckler are a €4 billion business a year.
Seven,
sorry. All right. What's 3 billion between pals? That's why I'm sitting on here and not in your chair, right? Yeah. 7 billion. You can't, the size and, I mean, straight away, I'll just think of the HR department there. Like, how many people is that?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you've got Total Computer Networks are over in Kettering on the A14 there. Yeah. I think Aidan Groom's the MD there. I've never been in his company, but from what I understand, he's a very good businessman, entrepreneurial. He's got a great team there, and they've consistently been in the top 100 for the last few years. So, and then, of course, a company that's a bit closer to my heart in Signing App. Yep. Dan Harding and Chris Burton have done a great job there, and that's now an international business that's a tech business that was born at the heart of Northamptonshire. Yeah. And
I've used that twice today, I think, to sign in here and somewhere I was earlier. So you see it everywhere now, which is great.
And yet it's such a simple concept that's now obviously evolved and gone into other industries, and quite rightly is getting international recognition. Mm-hmm. But again, it's been born out of Northamptonshire. Yeah. So I to echo what Fraser said, I think it's makes you feel quite proud, really. Mm-hmm. But also, probably a question for you, Mike. How, Grant Thornton carry out, I think, 11 of these, or 11 different areas. How do we, as Northamptonshire, fare or compare against the other areas?
Well, I might just pick up on Signing App just to finish that bit, because we sold that business to PSG, which is a US-based fund. They had approached the owner of Signing App, and he attended last year's
He was on the panel.
the event, right? And what he said was he was really passionate about building the business in Northampton. So all the staff, their office was here. He was really looking to employ people from the town, not move to London or to any of the other places, right? Just because it might be higher profile, but actually build presence and people here. So I think that's a great story. And now the presence of PSG as an investor in that, they're going to help that business internationalize. They're going to provide opportunities for the staff. They're going to give capital. They as a private equity fund alone, so many other businesses where Signing App will now be learning from those other businesses, potentially collaborating. So it just shows you that if big US funds are coming swooping into Northampton to buy businesses, there's obviously some good stuff going on here. A friend of mine actually owned a business founded here called iSams. It's a school software business that was bought by Iris. Wasn't quite big enough to be in the top 100, but sold for a very high price at a time when sort of tech multiples were very strong. I think at the time they employed about 100 people plus, most of who worked out of the Northampton office. So there are some great tech businesses here, and it's great. But I'm trying to remember what your second question was. And
how do we compare to other areas geographically?
So I think that the best stat from this report is that profit, or EBITDA, is up 22.5% year over year, which is the highest compared to any of the other counties. Revenue up sort of 16%, I think. So that again is very strong, but that EBITDA growth was the highest, and that the growth that we saw principally came from tech and services included logistics. But it just shows you that, the logistics you can see everywhere. You can see all the, the new buildings go up. I grew up here, and just sort of driving around today, it just looks so different to when I even first started work sort of 15, 16 years ago. But the tech is a little bit more under the radar, right? Because it's in sort of buildings like this that it's kind of not so obvious what they're doing, but there are so many fantastic businesses around.
Yeah, you look just surrounded by us. How many sheds, to quote the technical term, have been erected? Bracknell's around the corner there is full of them. Active Ants,
Well, there's a classic example of logistics tech, e-commerce.
All coming together.
So, Matt, do you want to add on anything to that from a Howes Percival perspective in geographical comparison?
Yeah, I think in reality we always undersell Northampton, I think, and it's not
Northamptonshire.
Northamptonshire. Yeah, no, we
Don't
do.
forget Wellingborough, Ketchup,
absolutely
Corby.
not. No,
They'll be ringing up.
You're absolutely right to correct me, Ben. No, I think we sometimes get a bit of a bad press, and actually it's times like this when you look at the reports like this, comparing us to the other counties that GT do this report on. There's not many that will have statistics like this across the board in all categories, just showing the growth, of profit, of turnover, of employee numbers, of salaries, of everything else that goes with it. We're really lucky, aren't we, to be working in this environment?
Completely. And I think, Mike, if I may, and definitely want your opinion as well on this, Matt, I think there's a lot of businesses out there, business owners, that don't necessarily have an exit plan.
Yeah.
And I'd think that there are some business owners out there as well that they might treat their business as a lifestyle business until actually it starts to become a bit serious, and that's through hard work, determination, maybe a little bit of luck as well. But then it's almost like, actually, where do I want to be in 5 years? Yeah. And I think there are some, and I've been fortunate enough to be in the company of some where they don't necessarily have a plan as such, but they've got really good, successful businesses. Yeah. What advice would you give those people, and at what level would they need to be before they maybe start thinking about having a conversation around what exit looks like?
Well, look, it's so important to be prepared, and because we were actually just doing a presentation internally about this together between our firms, and about exit planning, succession planning, because being ready is so important, because timing is everything. If you're not ready when the market's good, or when those buyers really want to buy you. So take the iSams example I mentioned earlier. They weren't ready, but they had a great business, and they had a swarm of buyers all looking to get into the independent schools software market at the same time. because there's all these consolidators building big software businesses. And, you know, they managed to do a deal really capitalizing on competitive tension. But so you want to be ready with, you know, your kind of management team there that a buyer can buy into, that you know that you've got good forecasts, that you've got solid historicals, that they're audited, that, you know, if you're a manufacturing company, that you've got well invested fixed assets that actually you've got capacity to grow and all that sort of good stuff, right? So, you know, the better prepared you are when the market's good, you can really capitalize on it. If you're not ready and you need to sell because you've had a change, you know, kind of change your lifestyle or something's happening in the family and you sort of decide to want to do things, then, you know, you might be selling into a cold market or where you're not quite as prepared and you're not going to get as high value. But if you've got everything in place, you can capitalize it. And the one thing we think succession planning is the most overlooked part of exit readiness. You know, if you do have a good management team, you can do the cliche sit on the beach and take the dividends if you want, or, you know, you can sell the business to a buyer that has full confidence in that management team's ability to keep driving growth. You know, if you're seen as super important to the business and critical to its day-to-day sort of function, a buyer's not going to let you go as part of a transaction. They're going to want you to either stay invested with some equity or, you know, tied in for 2 to 3 years running the business. So, you know, being ready just gives you more options.
When you say ready, just the time scale of that, just for people that may be listening, watching, that are considering it, are you talking 12 months? Are you talking 5 years? What define ready as a business?
I think ideally you want to be thinking about it sort of 3 to 5 years ahead, right? And putting some building blocks in place. So, you know, if you rush to do everything, you could do it in kind of six months on kind of what I would call the more hygiene side, so the accounting side, the legal side, making sure your contracts are signed, making sure that you don't have a lease that's due to run out where the landlord actually wants, you know, to kick you out in a few months or whatever it might be. But so that the hygiene side you can get ready in a shorter period of time, but getting in the right management team, that's not something you fix overnight, right? And a buyer's going to want that team to be incumbent for probably a good couple of years before they feel fully confident that that is the team running the business and it's not you running the business. Equally, if you need to invest to grow, whether it's, you know, buy a new piece of machinery or invest more in sales and marketing, as we all know in life, things take longer to actually come through to fruition and generate profit. So if you're spending X amount of money today to grow profits by Y, you need to give it that time and it needs to come through. So, you know, the sooner you're thinking about it and having a view on what you're trying to achieve, the better. Like, a buyer wants to know what the plan is. What is the plan from, what have you done to get to where you are, but then what are you going to do for what is the business going to do for the next 3 to 5 years? So having those building blocks in place with a business plan and all the assets to support it is critical.
And probably the overlooked part of it is probably the legal part, because you rightly or wrongly think finances need to be in place. But from your perspective, Matt, what advice can you give to someone that's on that journey where they're thinking, actually, somebody might want to come and buy my business in the next couple of years?
I think, it's a similar sort of message to what Mike's saying, but getting your team in place as soon as possible, as early as possible, is the most important thing to do. And that's both an internal team and an external team, making sure that team works really well together. So, you know, Mike touched on the management team. If you get a right management team right from the word go, right almost from inception or from when the business is quite at an early stage, you can introduce things like share option plans for management to help them go on that journey with you to grow that business. And they can be in place for, you know, an EMI scheme can be in place for 10 years before the business is sold. So you can be really early on in that journey and get the legals in place then to make sure that business is ready to sell in due course. Getting the right management team, getting the right advisors in place early on, making sure everybody's pulling to the same goal. The most savvy business owners know right from the outset what their end goal is. Yeah. That isn't to say that, you know, if you haven't got that end goal in place, you're not going to do well with the business. But you can be planning everything from, you know, do we want to be located here, or do we want to have employees here, or, you know, should we put employees in a different company, or our IP in a separate holding company, or how can we set things up in the most efficient way, tax efficient way, to make sure that this is the most successful exit for us. So I think getting that advice as early as possible is most important. I don't think you have to be a particular size. You mentioned this at the outset. Do you need to be a particular size to get that advice? No, I don't think so. You know, everybody should be talking to their accountants, their advisors, and, you know, one's worth their salt will put them in the right, you know, put them into the right people to talk about the right things.
So a company turning over £1 million a year now, making 150, 200 grand a year profit, that thinks, actually, do you know what? In 3 or 4 years' time, we could drive this business to 3-4 million.
Yeah.
we need to be having the conversations now, even if it's just to get a better understanding and education.
Absolutely.
Because the multiples on sales of businesses, they change a lot depending on the business or the sector. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, size is actually sort of really
Size
generic.
does matter.
Size does matter. And bigger businesses generally command higher multiples because they're seen as lower risk, seen as more stable businesses. The three things I say: size, growth rate. If a business is doubling in size versus one sort of growing 5%, the one that's doubling in size is obviously worth more because its future profits are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then sustainability or predictability of revenue. So the classic, software company that's got strong recurring revenue, low churn is worth more than the business that every day is spot selling whatever it's selling, and tomorrow might make the money if the market goes against them. So those are the three things. There's a whole melting pot of other things that goes to multiple, but those are kind of the three big ones.
And EBITDA, earnings before tax, depreciation, and
interest, tax,
Sorry,
depreciation,
yeah.
and amortization.
Right, that was the one.
Yeah.
Forgive my dyslexia. What was it, handling curd or something like I said the other week on the last podcast? Amortization, just layman's terms on that, please.
So amortization is is the depreciation of effectively an intangible asset. So if you capitalize, so if you're building a software company, for example, and you write some code, you can capitalize that onto the balance sheet because that's going to drive IP, and then you have to amortize that. But that's a good thing because you then get a tax offset for it. But
brilliant, because we EBITDA is a key one, and it obviously fluctuates depending on the sector that you're in.
Yep.
But the formula in terms of working that out is an interesting one.
Yeah, essentially what EBITDA is getting to is what's the cash profit of your business, because interest cost is really just a function of how much debt you've got, and different buyers will want, or different owners will want different levels of debt. That's not really indicative of what your business produces. The interest cost isn't indicative of the operations of the business. Same with tax. Depreciation and amortization are slightly different because both of them are effectively driven by how much CapEx or how much investment in sort of machinery or software development or whatever you've done in the past. So they are more relevant, but most buyers kind of look at EBITDA, but then we'll have a secondary look at, well, how much D&A is there, because what that does is it tells them how much capital needs to be invested in the business to help it grow. Obviously, the more capital intensive, and that could be both CapEx or working capital, the worse effectively, because you're having to constantly invest money to either stay as you are or grow, versus a business that's very CapEx light, that actually that cash profit is all money the business owner can take out of the business. So we talk a lot to people about managing their working capital at a level which they don't, they're not overstocking or they're not carrying too many debtors if they don't need to, because that frees up money, that creates more cash profit, and their business is then more valuable to somebody else.
If there was anything that was not a concern, but anything you'd go, oh, what would there be anything in this report, Matt?
Well, look, it's an age-old concern, I think, for a lot of businesses, but it's that retention of talent piece, I think, more than anything else. Yeah, it's we've all been there, right? We're trying to get the best people to get into the organisation and then keep them there is a really hard challenge for a lot of businesses, and for various reasons, we want to try and make sure that homegrown talent is sort of kept in this region. And it's Ben, I know you're a big fan of this. Is that link between education and business is so important.
I'm glad you said that, because if I go down to London, which is typically 2 or 3 times a month, I can't get a seat on the bloody train from Wellingborough, and that's because of the amount of talent that's going down. And it's the same at Kettering, it'll be the same at Corby, and it is from Northampton as well. And I do sort of scratch my head sometimes thinking, I wonder how many people on this platform that are getting up at 5:30 to go down to the capital are doing it for a job that they could potentially do in Northamptonshire. Because you only know what you know. Yeah. And I do feel that there's a much bigger conversation here, which will have to bridge the gap between local education and business, which we are trying our very best to do. Because that message has got to go home to kids that are in year 9, 10, 11 that are starting to think about their career. Yes, if you want to go on to higher education, we're blessed with lots of very established and successful colleges locally, and obviously the university. But actually, if you want to go into the world of work, I bet you I couldn't find a business that wouldn't want to take on a school leaver. Yeah. Regardless of how unique it is, it doesn't matter because Northamptonshire is so diverse. Yeah. Whether it's manufacturing, engineering, professional services.
You could put in the banking side. How many people go down to the city to work in banking and finance? You don't need to. You've got Weatherby's and Arkle sat in the heart of Wellingborough that are there, and you don't need to. But I think the workplace will change because obviously it's changed in the last few years. But I think that educational side will people realise that you haven't got to get up at 5:30 in the morning to go and live this dream, because it's the old-fashioned way of looking at it. You've got to, if you want to be big, you've got to go to the city. You don't need to anymore. You read this report from the front to the back, and it's something to be proud of.
Absolutely. So as we're not quite finished, but we're going to put a link up. But for those that want to download a copy or be sent a copy of this, Mike, how do we do it? They fill in the form?
Yep, GT website, fill in the form. That gets you a copy of the report, as well as just insights on what we're up to in the county going forward, which will be helpful, hopefully.
Now, it'd be remiss of us to let you go without asking you a very important question.
Famous question.
So It's a festive season. You're going out for a Christmas turkey, maybe a glass of bubbly or a pint of the black stuff. Which 3 people, Matt, would you take, past or present, and why? And Mike, you can think about that while he's giving us his answer.
Okay.
Well, you're nearest to me, so I'll throw you in first.
Okay. So I guess there's a bit of there's a little bit of a business link to this. So let's try and keep it on that front. I quite like to go for a drink with David Attenborough.
Yeah.
So, and you say, well, why is there a business link to that? Well, we all know what David Attenborough does, and he's the king at doing what he does. But so many businesses nowadays are looking at sort of ESG. It's becoming more and more prominent. Actually, there's so much businesses could learn from somebody like that. But also, I bet he's quite fun after a few pints.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I think him. Tom Kerridge has always been somebody I'd quite like to go for a pint with. I actually quite like him to cook me Christmas dinner one day. Have him around the Christmas dinner table. I think he'd be quite an entertaining character. He's sort of quite well known. He's built up some quite nice businesses himself. So he'd be quite good fun.
Entrepreneurial, aren't they? I never know if that's the chefs as an individual, or if it's because they're surrounded by 1 or 2 good people in business that have then gone, actually, you've got an opportunity here to branch out and diversify, whether that be other restaurants or cookbooks or whatever. But good guy.
Possibly. But you've got to take those opportunities, haven't you? So you've got to be savvy enough to jump on those opportunities, even if someone else has put them in front of you. So I think David Attenborough, Tom Kerridge, and Freddie Mercury. I think a bit of a blast from the past. A bit of a Queen fan, brought up on Queen in my house. So that would be quite a nice thing to bring out for a drink.
On the Tom Kerridge one, I'm sure we met him last year at the food and drink at the Excel when we went
Rationale.
With Rationale. Yeah, really, really interesting chap. You could see his mind
quite down to earth, isn't he? But also
very great.
And he was fantastic with the pupils from Milton Keynes College.
Correct. Yeah.
Brilliant. He encouraged. So they were there on the stand. He was doing like live cooking demonstration. And they were there sort of watching, and he was actually, no, come on, get involved. Yeah. And he had a couple of them either side of him, sort of getting involved with the prepping and stuff. And that would have, I forgot about that.
Yeah, real. It showed him as a true person and a creative, but also extremely caring and passionate about what he does.
Yeah. Impressive table. Go on, Mike, top that.
No pressure.
Well, I had, from a business perspective, I'd say Richard Branson. I think he'd have some phenomenal stories of entrepreneurship and taking companies into new places and transactions he's done and all that, and maybe he'll take me into space as well if I ask him nicely. Similarly to Freddie Mercury, I had Elton John in my list because I thought, if you're going to go to a pub or a dinner party, maybe he jumps on the piano and plays some songs and everyone gets into it. That'll be good fun. And then lastly, it would be Barack Obama, because I just think as a obviously former president, but generally kind of a world leader almost. I just thought, he was so impressive, and I don't know if anyone's seen the documentary he did, and I think it was called like The Last Year or The Last Round or something, where he went all around the world to some of the sort of difficult spots and sort of really trying to kind of bring unity and solve problems in his last year. That was such an interesting documentary, and it's just, he is such a fantastic leader. So it'd be great to spend some time with him.
Brilliant. Gents, thank you ever so much. I'm really glad you've come in to talk to us today about this. If you're listening or watching this, I'd really encourage you to download a copy of the Northamptonshire Limited 2023. It's a great read, great insight, and you know who to call if you're thinking about selling your business in a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, gents.
Thank you.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys.
Thanks
Merry
for having
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.